page of respiratory system in first aid, and you can correlate. This is FA 2021 685 page number. Now just correlate it with your own first aid. Let's begin. First, club cells. Nothing of this has exactly come in any of the past years. If it does, I'll say, but then most importantly, it is non-ciliated. Okay, all the cells, whatever we have come across, those are usually ciliated, cuboidal, columnar stuff. So this is non-ciliated with secretory granules, low columnar cuboidal with secretory granules. It is located in the bronchioles. So non-ciliated secretory granules, bronchioles, and it degrades toxin via cytochrome P450. This is important, cytochrome P450. They secrete a component of surfactant progenitor cells for club and ciliated cells, mainly ciliated cells. So the three most important things here is non-ciliated, bronchioles, and cytochrome P450. It is an antitoxin. These are club cells. Now let's come to the most important one. Okay, there are two types of these pneumocytes which are most important. This has actually been repeated in NEET as well as INI both. Okay, as you can see, especially type 2. Okay, type 2 is very important. So let's go through it. Type 1 pneumocyte is squamous, 97% of the alveolar surface. So squamous, in turn, this is what? Cuboidal and clustered. So these are type 1 pneumocyte thinly line the alveoli. Look at this. This diagram is what you need to pay attention to. They just type 1 pneumocytes, they just line the alveoli, thinly line the alveoli for optimal gas exchange. Optimal gas exchange. Now type 2 pneumocyte, most important. First, cuboidal and clustered. Okay, that was squamous. Two functions. They have two functions. First is stem cell precursors for both type 1 as well as type 2. Okay, and they proliferate when there's lung damage. That's very obvious because stem cells, they proliferate when there's lung damage. Don't pay attention to this red. Secretes surfactant from lamellar bodies. So type 2 pneumocytes have these structures called lamellar bodies from where they secrete the surfactant. Now what is surfactant? It decreases, it is a compound that is mainly composed of multiple lecithins, mainly this particular lecithin name. Okay, it has come, and make sure you register it in your head. So dipalmitoyl phosphatidyl choline, DPPC. Again, dipalmitoyl phosphatidyl choline. Okay, and most importantly, in this compound at position in palmitate, you have 1,2-glycerol. Okay, basically. So that is like a positional thing. Just remember that. Okay, just remember that vaguely. Okay, so synthesis of DPPC begins at 20 weeks of gestation and achieves maturity at 35 weeks of gestation. Corticosteroid important for fetal surfactant synthesis and lung development. Okay, so that's why when there's less level of corticosteroids, then you have issues. Okay, and that's why we give, what do we give when you have neonatal respiratory distress syndrome? You give corticosteroids. Okay, so this is it. Now another very important formula, collapsing pressure 2 multiplied by surface tension divided by radius. So it's inversely proportional. Okay, inversely proportional. Now law of Laplace says alveoli has high tendency to collapse on expiration when the radius decreases. So when this radius decreases, okay, then your collapsing pressure, the tendency of the alveoli to collapse, that increases. Okay, when surface tension increases, then also the collapsing pressure or the tendency of the alveoli to collapse increases. So that's why surfactant is necessary in order to decrease the surface tension. Okay, so that is it. That's why we had decreased alveolar surface tension, decreased alveolar collapse, decreased lung recoil, and therefore there's increased compliance. Okay, next is alveolar macrophages. So most important is the heart failure cells here. Because heart failure cells does not exist in the heart. These are hemosiderin laden macrophages that is found in pulmonary edema and alveolar hemorrhage, and they release cytokines and alveolar proteases. Okay. Next, most important, and it has come multiple times in both NEET PG as well as INICET, is neonatal respiratory distress syndrome. Now, neonatal respiratory distress syndrome, you have a surfactant deficiency. So, there's increase in surface tension, it leads to alveolar collapse, go back to Laplace law. Okay, there's diffuse bilateral ground glass appearance and fine reticulogranular pattern. Okay, so this is very important. Fine reticulogranular pattern. The risk factors. Okay, first let me show you this particular. These are the reticulogranular pattern, and it is a ground glass appearance. Okay, this is how it looks like. All right. So now come to the risk factors. See, all of us know prematurity is one of the risk factors. Okay, that is very obvious. But the most, I mean, you can get this, and it is most surprising as well. Even diabetes during pregnancy, if you have increased fetal insulin, since you have increased fetal insulin, that also can lead to RDS. Okay, C-section delivery, because there's decrease of fetal glucocorticoids and less, it is less stressful than vaginal delivery. That's why you have less release of this fetal glucocorticoids. So that also can lead. But at the same time, perinatal asphyxia, this also can lead to RDS. Okay. Now, treatment includes maternal steroids before birth. Okay, maternal steroids before birth. That's why in prematurity, beginning itself, you start giving exogenous surfactant for the infant. Okay, so exogenous surfactant for the infant. You also have intratracheal administration of this. Therapeutic supplemental oxygen that is given, which can result to rib. Okay, so these three is very important. Retinopathy of prematurity, intraventricular hemorrhage, and bronchopulmonary dysplasia. So it can lead to, if you give too much of supplemental therapeutic oxygen, then it can lead to, these are the three things that it can lead to. The clinical features of neonatal respiratory distress syndrome is tachypnea, chest retraction, expiratory grunt, nasal flaring, and cyanosis can be plus minus. So tachypnea, these are the respiratory symptoms, and there is a lot of correlation with the Silverman Anderson score here. So you can just go ahead and look at this. Okay. Next is, this is hypoaerated lungs, and you have air bronchogram sign. So air bronchogram sign, basically in the background of, in a background of ground glass, you have these thin blackish air in the airways. Next is severe disease. In case of severe disease, you have obliterated diaphragm and cardiac contour. So this is like quite severe. So obliterated diaphragm and cardiac contour due to marked opacification, which leads to complete whiteout. The X-ray itself is called whiteout appearance. Okay. Next is phosphatidylglycerol. This is produced at 36 weeks. Now, to see this, basically to see whether phosphatidylglycerol is produced or not, we do the shake test. So screening tests for fetal lung maturity, lecithin, sphingomyelin, LS ratio has to be more than 2, and less than 1.5 is predictive for NRDS. Foam stability index is another, and surfactant albumin ratio is another. Okay, screening tests. These are all screening tests. So we got lecithin, sphingomyelin, LS ratio, and foam stability index, and surfactant albumin ratio. Persistently low oxygen tension, you can also have a risk of patent ductus arteriosus. Now, this is a very important graph. So what happens here? Let's try and decode this. So lecithin and sphingomyelin. Now you're saying that lecithin has to become more, because we are, why lecithin has to become more, because here your surfactant was composed of DPPC, so that's why lecithin has to increase. Okay, so slowly here what happens is lecithin is increasing. So obvious, it is very obvious that LS ratio is also going to increase. Okay, maximum surfactant is 34 weeks, so that's why we do that shake test and everything at 36, means it is approximately at 36 weeks. Okay, so what happens here is slowly, as the gestation week increases, your lecithin amount goes up, but then when your lecithin, and sphingomyelin slowly goes down. But if it fails, okay, like if there isn't a lot of, if it is still low, okay, when it is early gestational weeks, lecithin is still low, then that is a risk factor, because LS ratio is low, your surfactant hasn't been made properly, so premature infants are at greater risk. So what were the risk factors? Even diabetes was a risk factor there. That is important. So these are the things that has been asked, and hope it was helpful.